Welcome to the Arrowheads Podcast, your official podcast of the PLL sanctioned supporter group, the Arrowheads, your one-stop shop for Utah Archers lacrosse. Welcome to another episode of the Arrowhead Podcast, your official podcast of the official supporter group of the Archers Lacrosse Club. With us today, I always say this, I'm so excited. We have the local lad, the hometown hero, if you will, of the Utah Archers, Beau Pederson. Beau, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
All right, Beau. So for those who may live under a rock or maybe new to the Archers, who's Beau Pederson? Give us your background. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so like you said, Utah kid. So I was born and raised in Park City. Went to high school at Park City High School. So did my whole youth and high school career there. I went committed to Princeton when I was a sophomore, and I went there for 4 years. Because of the COVID thing, I had an extra year of eligibility and was lucky enough to be able to go to Michigan for my fifth year. Ended up having a pretty good year there. And then as the rest of history, Archers drafted me in the second round. And yeah, had a great summer. Couldn't ask for a better summer, really. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I know Toast has a burning question for you.
I do, yeah. But first of all, Beau, thanks for being on with us, talking lacrosse. It's a huge honor to have you on. We're super excited. One of my first questions for you was how you first started playing lacrosse in the first place. It looks like your dad played football at Michigan.
Yeah.
What originally got you into lacrosse?
Yeah, so it's actually my dad, my dad's friend. He had kids that when I was like 3 or 4, they were in sixth and eighth grade maybe, and they had started playing lacrosse, and there wasn't really a youth program in Park City. So my dad's friend asked my dad to help him coach, just because my dad had experience coaching, even though he knew nothing about lacrosse. So my dad started going out to those practices, and he'd just bring me along with him. So from that age, like 3 or 4 years old, I just had a stick and I was kind of around the game. And, I kind of fell in love with it at a super young age and just stayed with it throughout my whole life. So I was lucky enough for a Utah kid to be able to have my stick in my hand at such a young age. It was awesome.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a familiar story, it sounds like, for so many kids in Utah, just like your dad's a coach because they needed to start a program. I know Toast, who
Yeah.
was actually on the PLL's Instagram day talking about starting out, and the city didn't have a team, and how do you build that team for your local city and all that. So yeah, it's awesome that you congrats on making it to the big time from Utah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It
Love
was
it.
awesome.
And
Um,
with that, sorry, I got one more question just to
Yeah.
follow up
Yeah.
with that. Did you always know that you wanted to keep playing lacrosse? It sounded like you played a little bit of football, a little bit of hockey. I was curious, like, was football kind of the number one for you, or for a while, or did you naturally always want to continue playing lacrosse?
Yeah. So I obviously always played lacrosse, and my dad actually, thank goodness for him, but he didn't let me play tackle football until I was a freshman in high school. So, and with how crazy recruiting was like back then, by the time I would have started to even consider being recruited for football, I'd already committed for lacrosse. So like my freshman fall and then like summer going into my sophomore year of high school, that was like the recruiting window. So for lacrosse, that is. So I was like already kind of in the process and kind of set my mind to it. And by the time, I got a few looks for football, it was like halfway through my senior year, and I was so sold on, going to Princeton and the program there. So it was just a little too late. I don't get me wrong, I love football and I love playing hockey, but lacrosse has always been, my passion. So
Love it.
yeah. I have a follow-up question to that too. So when you got recruited, obviously lacrosse in Utah for high school was club, right? I mean,
yeah,
it didn't exist like it is today. For the high school kids listening to us now, they're like, oh yeah, we show up, it's official, we go to the stadium, we're on the cameras, you name it, they've got film, everything going on. Uh, we actually had a high school kid text in, Wes Heron from Westlake, who wanted to ask you the question of, what should a kid do? How do they get noticed by D1 coaches, for one? But I'd love to kind of get your aspect on that, and then how you got recruited, like what it was like for you coming from playing club in Utah to being getting recruited to Princeton.
Yeah. All right. I'll start with answering kind of like my experience personally. So, first of all, I was super lucky to get coached by super knowledgeable people. So, from a young age, I started playing for, I don't know if you guys know the 2-1-2 lacrosse
Mhm.
program in Utah,
Yep.
Mike Acey. So he won a couple national championships at UNC, super accomplished attackman. So he started coaching me when I was probably in fourth, fifth grade. I had Rich Levy, who was a captain at Brown, coach my fifth and sixth grade team. And then our high school team, we had Phil Dobson, who won a national championship at Loyola. Elias Fairman coached me for a year, really knows what he's talking about. Brian Billsy that played at Manhattan. So I was lucky enough to be surrounded by, former Division I talent and guys who knew, what skills you needed to go to the next level. And then in terms of getting recruited, I played for Utah Stars way back when that was the club team in Utah. And then was lucky enough to make the West Coast Stars team. And that's kind of how I initially got recruited. But my Princeton offer actually came from, the U15 national, the Utah team that I was on. We were playing FCA, like their national team, which is like a huge, and they had all the top guys in my class on that team. And the Princeton coach, Mads, went to go watch a kid on FCA and happened to see me playing. So it was kind of right place, right time. And even though like I played West Coast Stars, ended up doing like Under Armour stuff, it was actually the Utah national team that Princeton saw me and capitalized. And then in terms of getting recruited now, like I think playing on a club team is important, but now with guys like Bubba and Garrett Bullitt and Brian Baker, guys in front of me, and then my brother Dylan Bauer, we've had enough guys go D1 that I think that there's a little bit of traction in Utah. Like these kids, there are kids that can play. So I think playing well, you got to send film out, email to coaches, and I'm a big proponent of if you can pick a couple schools, you can go to like their club or their prospect day just so you're in front of them. I think that's important, but just like you don't, I don't think as much you have to go east all the time for tournaments. You can play in like California. Those tournaments are really there's high level. So I think the most important thing is working on your skills and coach. If you're good enough, coaches will find you. Is my thing. So just honing your skills is the biggest thing, and then playing a club team and sending coaches film.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually going to ask you like advice on clubs. I saw you played for clubs, and there's clubs. It
Yeah,
seems like there's clubs popping up everywhere right now.
yeah,
Certainly in Utah starting. Like, if you're a kid and you have aspirations, like, what should they look for in a club that they're going to go join?
yeah. I think the first thing is like the coaches there. What do they know? And I know right now, like there's the Summit team that has like Gittleman. I think Manny's still doing it. Holman, like those are three top tier PLL guys, but also guys that like Gittleman has college coaching experience and has connections in that world. Obviously, Marcus and Will do too. So I think playing for those guys where they not only are super knowledgeable of the game, but also have an understanding of, the college landscape. And they were college coaches once. So they were the ones once, looking at kids, recruiting tapes, going and watching kids at tournaments. So having them coach you is pretty helpful, just because they'll tell you what college coaches are looking for. But at the end of the day, I really think it's just playing and being out there and having just like I was playing for the Utah club team, like that I got noticed by Princeton. So it's kind of like a little bit of luck, but just being, you don't have to be on the top team if you're good. Like you don't have to be on the best club team if you're good enough. You just have to be, in the tournament getting eyes on you.
Yeah, love that. All right, but final question for in this section, and you obviously came through the experience that a lot of Utah kids have come through, and some of us have seen over the years of building lacrosse programs, starting it from the ground up, um, to seeing high school become fully sanctioned by UHSAA, right? And high schools take that on and grow the program. You were obviously you're at Michigan at the time. PLL announces home cities. Utah gets announced that the Archers are going to be coming. What was you? And obviously, you weren't even on. You weren't an Archer at the time.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to Utah getting a pro team?
I mean, I was super excited. It like I just know that like not just for lacrosse, but I think Utah is as a market is a pretty slept on, like sports town. Like even if you look at the support the Utah hockey club's getting right now, it's like off the hook how many people are at the games. Like just around the arena. So I think that Utah, like everyone loves the Jazz, but it seemed like, we were ready for another program, another team to come in and and it was just super cool. And I was just like ecstatic that the PLL being in Utah will undoubtedly bring more of a spotlight to the kids playing in Utah. So I'm super excited. I think it's going to open up some doors for kids playing right now.
100%. I'm very excited about the future of lacrosse in Utah. It looks very bright.
For sure.
One thing we wanted to talk to you about too was the draft day and kind of just the draft process in general. Like what was that like for you? Did you have any teams reaching out to you, or were you just kind of hoping to get drafted? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously just hoping to get drafted. I'd looked at some like PLL, some of the big boards or whatever, and it had me going like third round to a couple different teams. And I was kind of unaware of the Latrell Harris situation at the time with him being down. So I didn't know how bad he was hurt and that they were like looking to replace a D midi right away. Um, so I didn't really think that I was going to get drafted by Utah. I honestly thought I was going to get picked up in one of the two or three picks after that. And that day we had practice and we just finished practice and we were watching it in like our team lounge area. So I was expecting to get picked, right after the Utah draft pick. And when I got picked, it was just like, I honestly, it was kind of like lost for words as everything kind of came together at once. I was like super excited, super surprised. And then it all kind of like hit me. I was like, I'm going home to like play for my hometown team, which is like, as a kid, like growing up, looking back to when I was like 10 years old, like that's every kid's dream. So I was super lucky and couldn't be more blessed.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's such a cool experience, and we can say that on the other end, we were stoked that we were getting a Utah kid on the team.
Yeah.
It's like there's very few guys in the league that are from Utah, so having one of the I think the only guy who rookie from Utah going to Utah, that was so cool to us.
Yeah. It was awesome
Um,
for sure.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about was your different role transitions that you saw just kind of over the course of your career. When you were playing in Utah, you were probably the best attackman in the state. You had like 100 points your senior year, team captain, and then when you go to Princeton, it looks like you transition to like an Omidi role, and then
Yeah.
somewhere along the way, I think 2020-ish, you end up transitioning to a D MIDI role. So I was just curious, like, was that transition, was that pretty natural, or was it coaching decisions? Were you kind of mad about it? I'm just kind of curious about what the
Yeah,
transition was like.
for sure. So I played attack in Utah and like club freshman through like junior year, basically. And then my senior year, I ended up playing like more midfield. And when I committed to Princeton, I knew that it was more of like, I knew I was going to go there and be an offensive midi, at least for my freshman and sophomore year, just with like, we had Chris Brown, Sowers, Phil Robb. Like, we had a pretty loaded attack that was going to be there for a couple of years. So I was like, I know when I get to Prince, I'm not going to be, I'm not taking Sowers' spot. So I knew I was going to be playing some midfield. Um, but yeah, so played offensive midfield my freshman year, and then it was actually the fall of my sophomore year. Coaches called me in, and they're just like, "Listen, like, we think you're, we can." They basically were like, "Listen, we think you're a very good offensive player, and you'll play offense for us." But like at the time, we were so loaded on offense. Like I said, Sowers, Phil Robb, Chris Brown at attack, and then we had like Vardaro, who's in the league, Jake Stevens, Sammy English was a freshman. And it was just like we had so many guys that are like, would you be willing to play defense? Like I think that we can use that athleticism down there. And it took me a little bit. I was like, I don't know. Talked to my dad. And so when my dad actually had great advice for me, when he committed to play at Michigan, he was a quarterback. And during his summer, they were like, listen, we think you're a good quarterback, but we think you can play as a tight end now. And he was just like, whatever will help the team win. So that was kind of my mindset. Like, whatever the coaches think will give us the best chance to win games, like, I'm all in. So ended up being the best decision anyone's ever made, switching me to defense. But it was like a little bit of a transition for sure, but super grateful that ended up working out how it happened. So, yeah.
That's so cool.
So you get drafted, and what does that process look like leading up into training camp? Obviously, you said you didn't know what was going on with Latrell Harris at the time. Can you kind of walk us through into training camp, and then eventually we'll go through some of the moments out your rookie
Yeah.
season?
So, obviously, like season ended at Michigan, so it was kind of like a week moving out period. Kind of like decompressed, just kind of like take a break. We've been playing for 5 straight months, so I took kind of a week, and then started, training a little bit, and then right out to training camp. And there's definitely an adjustment, going from college to pro. Just like every guy every guy in the PLL was the number one guy in college, like no matter what. Every guy on the midfield was getting a pull in college. So it's just like everyone is just that much better. I was lucky enough to have Marzi and Pike kind of show me the ropes, like two young guys who just gone through the transition to the PLL the year before. Really
Yeah.
kind of helped me through the process, explain like some of the differences and then like things that I had to focus on and like change a little bit about my game. So having those two guys that were like couldn't have been more important. I was like so lucky to have those guys help me through the process. It made it so much smoother into that first game. So
Awesome. So it seems like you and the defensive midi kind of group kind of bonded right away. They kind of took you under their wing and kind of helped you make that adjustment. What were some of the adjustments as far as like the team goes? Like you go from a big program at Michigan or Princeton, where there's a lot. How many players do they allow? Like 40 or something like that on
at,
the
at Michigan or
or
at Princeton,
any college program?
Michigan, we had Princeton my senior year, we had 52, and Michigan, we had 55 or 56 guys. And then, yeah, and then you go to training camp and it's like a 25-man roster. So, and then
Yeah.
game day is obviously 19, so it's less than half the size. But in terms of the transition of the team, I was lucky. Like I knew Ambler and Shribes a little bit, just like through Princeton stuff, alumni. So I'd already had a relationship, especially with Ambler. We were kind of friends at that point. And I mean, everyone on the team's awesome, like super welcoming, just awesome guys. So I was lucky to get drafted into a locker room like that too.
Yeah, so what do the Archers do outside of game weeks? Like what are some of the team activities? What is kind of that meshing and bonding um like period look like for a professional lacrosse player in the PLL?
Ice cream.
Yeah. So
Ice
yeah,
cream.
ice cream, exactly. But training camp, it's like team dinners and like we have Bates and Shribes is the captain and Ambler do a really good job of kind of setting like from day one, practice one of training camp, we knew our goal and it was to win again, like go back to back. Um, so I think having that super clear, vision and mission as a team kind of like helps everyone bond together, but also aligns everyone's visions and goals. Like from the very start, we knew that was the goal from the like first minute I was there. So when you're all working towards the same thing, you inevitably get closer. So I think that was like a super key piece was just everyone's mission and vision for the year was like super aligned from the beginning.
Awesome. No, that makes sense. And that's a great coaching and leadership from a leadership and standpoint that just shows like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're working towards, and every decision that we make goes towards this.
Exactly.
Um, could you walk us through one of the highlights of your season? This could be off the field or on the field, but just one moment that stands out to you as a rookie this year. I mean, obviously you guys won a championship. That's up
Yeah.
there. But what
I
was
mean,
one of your favorite memories, whether on or off the field?
yeah, obviously the championship, but a little bit of a cop out answer. My favorite moment I think this year was the Utah first game when Shribes goes down and when he comes back out onto the field. I think it was between the third and fourth quarter. Like the standing ovation and like crowd getting so behind him and like so amped up in that moment. Like it's giving me chills right now just thinking about it. For like our first like home game for like the leader of our team to have that much support from the fan base was like it was unbelievable. And like all the other fan bases like were great all year, but like that specific moment just to see how aligned everyone in that stadium was like behind him it was really awesome.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I can imagine. And we were there and we enjoyed it. And I think that was like, I remember Shribes going down in the Redwoods game and my heart sank.
Yeah.
He's like as tough as nails and he didn't get up right away. And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we all knew it had to be bad for him to not,
yeah, yeah,
pop right
he
back
gets
up and
up, yeah.
get back
And
on
so
defense. So
So going with that homecoming weekend, I think a moment for us fans was a specific play that you actually had with I mean, we call it a pick six, obviously. It was,
Yeah.
but can you kind of walk us through and how you knew where that pass was going, or was it mostly reactionary? Can you kind of walk us through that experience with the outlaw game as well?
Yeah, yeah. So that play, it's kind of like a crazy ground ball. They ended up coming up with it. Um, moved it once. O'Neal was kind of going down the slide side, and we slid to him, kind of like hectic. And there were two guys like behind me, and I thought he was throwing it to the guy more top center. So that's why I started to break that way. When I saw the ball, I knew it was going to like the guy behind me a little bit to the right. So I was kind of jumped, put my stick up, and it was just kind of like reactionary, I guess. Like came down with it, and honestly kind of blacked out a little bit when I went to the cage. So I guess if you see it, there's an end zone view of it somewhere, and our whole defense is like, no, no, like slow it down, slow it down. Specifically, Warren Jeffries like, slow it down, like settle, settle. And I shot, and he's like, ah. But it was pretty funny. But yeah, kind of blacked out after that goal. But it was awesome. I heard the crowd going crazy, which was
Yeah.
awesome for me. Yeah,
I don't think there was a single fan that was seated when that happened. Everyone was on their feet
yeah, it
cheering because
was
we all
definitely.
knew that this was the Utah guy,
Yeah,
The homeboy. And so we were amped. And it
yeah,
was
it was awesome.
and it wasn't just like, oh, it's the Utah kid, but that also felt like to us a big momentum
Oh,
switcher.
for sure. It was a momentum goal. And, Trey, I think, got us started on that. That was kind of in the middle of the run. Trey hit that two ball that really got things going a little bit. Vano hit one. I hit that. I think Vano hit another one. So it was definitely part of the momentum switch, but the crowd really got into it. But I think Trey's that two ball he had right at the end of the shot clock was like the real kind of turning point where we were like, we're going to get this done for sure. So I just kind of capitalized on the momentum that was kind of going right there.
Yeah. No, that was it was an awesome moment as a fan to experience as
Oh,
well.
for sure.
As a player,
I bet.
that would have been awesome. Can you just share? You've mentioned the culture and how much you've enjoyed it, and this is going to be my last question, but
Yeah.
can you share an experience off field that you've had, whether it's with a new teammate that you've had this year, something that you've enjoyed off the field with your new teammate and your new teammates?
Yeah, I think one thing is like that ice cream run, like it's something that like it is funny and like it's like a reward, but at the same time it's like it is something that we all like really enjoy. We'd pile into a few cars and go find like Baskin Robbins or a Cold Stone, and just like those memories kind of like like kind of forgetting about lacrosse, just like being friends with the guys is something that like I've really enjoyed. And specifically like me and Mace Woodward, we were roommates all year and like ended up like for only being together for like 3 months this summer, like I would say he's one of my better friends, and we had developed like a super awesome relationship. So super grateful for that and like the whole D group. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And yeah, we love Mason, friend of the podcast. And
Yeah.
we had him on recently. We're happy to have
Yeah, I
you.
saw that.
We would love, let's organize this next year when you guys come to Utah. Let's all hit up a Baskin Robbins and sell that place out and
We'll
have
have to. We're gonna have to. We have
All
to
right, so
pitch a good game and then do it.
so I
yeah.
have a question on this, Bo. So I
Yeah.
talked to my kids about this. So my daughter actually made ice cream last summer to like make, to raise money for, whatever teenage girls do.
Yeah.
But I was like, what if a Utah shop, like one of these local, like a Rockwell ice cream or something like that, was like, hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna design a Utah Arches ice cream. Okay, I'm gonna ask you,
Uh,
what flavor would it be? What would be a Utah Arches ice cream flavor?
wow. We have a super diverse ice cream taste across our defense, so this is gonna be tough. I think a lot of guys love cookies and cream is always a big one for us. Me specifically, I like cookies and cream. I like a little coffee ice cream every once in a while,
Good call.
but I'm gonna have to say it's got to be something with cookies and cream, or maybe like an M&M ice cream with orange and blue in there.
That's a great
I don't. Yeah, I got. And so my family, like my parents' business, actually, they own one of the Rocky Mountain chocolate factories up in Park City. So I'm
Okay,
well versed in my ice cream, making ice cream. So
I get it.
Nice.
yeah,
All right, mom and dad, let's figure out this Utah
yeah, I know.
Arches flavor,
Let's
like
get it
coffee
going a little
base,
bit.
coffee base with some Oreos in it and some M&Ms. Like we
Yeah,
got it
let's get it
covered.
going.
So yeah, awesome. How was that? I mean, a Utah homecoming, right? I mean, like you said, you got drafted by your team. You've gone through the whole season. You finally head to Utah. You step off the bus with your Park City shirt on, right? I'm guessing that was your
Yeah.
old jersey. Like,
Yeah.
how was that for you? Just that homecoming, like stepping on the field. You're looking at the mountain range, knowing like you grew up on the other side of that, right? Like, how
Yeah.
was that?
I mean, like, you really can't put into words like how awesome that experience was. Like for a kid, like for me, it was like a dream come true. Like I get to play in front of my family, like all my friends that like still live in Utah, all came to the game. I had like, I think I had like a 35-person ticket block that was like all my like friends and like closest friends and family there. So from my perspective, like it couldn't have been. It was like a dream come true. It really was. But like for our team, I talked about it a little bit before, but we were 4-4 going into that, and like we needed those 2 wins, not just for the 1 seed, but like to gain momentum going into playoffs. So for us to like have those 2 games with such a like impressive home crowd was like so pivotal, so pivotal. Like I really think like the crowd being so into that like Redwoods game like really kind of pushed us over the hump in overtime, and then obviously in the second game against the Outlaws, that third quarter run, like you just felt the energy, and like you always hear like don't get too high, don't get too low, but like when the crowd's like that, it's like you gotta ride that wave. So like for us as a team being at home with the fan base and like that energy in the stadium, like to gain that momentum, win the West and like get that 1 seed, it came homecoming that weekend couldn't have been better time for us either.
Yeah, it was such an exciting couple of days, right? And those games
Yeah.
couldn't have been better, like you said. And um, how do you feel? Like the PLL asked the question today. It's PLL day, right? And they asked the
Yeah.
question of like who's the best fan group in the sport group, and um, I we all think Utah's the best. You guys played around, but like, what makes the
Yeah.
Utah fan base a little different than maybe when you go playing in New York or in Maryland?
Yeah. Um, like first I would say like the thing that stuck out to me is like every other venue there was obviously like when we played in Baltimore there were more Whip Snakes jerseys, but like you'd see like every other jersey. It seemed like in or Boston like you'd see a lot of Cannon jerseys, but there were still like the other jerseys. It seemed like in Utah it was like 90-95% like orange and blue, like Archers jerseys, like Archers merch throughout the whole stadium. So I think just like the buy-in that rather than like Utah seemed like it was less like we're PLL fans, which like everyone is, but it's like we're Archers fans like first. Like that's what we care about. So to me that was the biggest difference, and like you could feel that like with the energy. Like when we scored like place went nuts. Like they were hitting the Congo line, like place was going crazy. And like when I just remember like in the Redwoods game, they scored a goal in the fourth quarter and it was like crickets. Like no one, there was no reaction. So I think like the true home field feel that we had was like super unique and special.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if you listened to the episodes, but Dobber did convert one of the few last holdouts to not be an Archers fan. My youngest son, who's been a Whipsnakes fan forever, and Dobber
Yeah,
finally converted him. So I think it's going to get even better next year. We did ban
exactly.
him from wearing his shirt to the games, so
Yeah,
he was made to wear something
awesome.
else.
Yeah, I
But
got
yeah,
I got one thing. There's one thing we got to talk about. We got
Yeah,
to talk about the D midi unit
yeah,
on the Archers. I'm a big D midi fan. I played a little bit. It's one of my favorite positions. And I think it's severely no underrated. I think it's severely underrated. Especially with the 32-second shot clock in the
yeah,
PLL with the transitions being so fast, having D mids that can go 2 ways. I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on working with, in what my opinion is the greatest D midi crew with you, Mar, and Bond. What was that like working with those guys?
I mean, I touched on it a little bit earlier, just like how they kind of like took me under their wing a little bit and like showed me the ropes. But like us three, like you said, I think we're like a super dynamic group, and I think we all have things that we're like specifically good at. Like I think like we can all cover everyone, I'd like to say, but like I'd say like Mar on like the smaller like super quick guys is like completely locked down, and like Pipe can do both. Like Pipe can cover a little guy, he can cover a big guy. He's like got great feet. And obviously like I'd say I'm a little bit more on like the physical side. So like I can take like the more like bruising, like dodge, like downhill dodging midfield. So I think like as a trio, we each have a unique kind of attribute that we're pretty like that makes us unique and good. But overall, as a whole, I think it's just like our mindset. I touch on it like we don't want to be viewed as like a weakness or like a weak link to our defense that like you got to be ready to slide to, and obviously like it's gonna happen. You're gonna have to get slid to, but we really do take pride in like winning our matchups one on one and like not letting guys get to the rack on us. So I think more than anything, it's kind of our mindset that like we're not going to be like a weak link like a lot of defenses. Like you got to watch out like when our shorties are getting dodged, like we got to be ready to go. But like we view it that we're out there to like dominate our matchup and like just like take our guy out of the game. So I think it's more about like our mindset and competitiveness more than anything.
Right. And I guess I just wanted to give you guys your flowers because
Thank
it
you.
seems
No,
like
thank
every
you.
part of the Archers team gets talked about. We talk about, Dauber at goalie and how amazing he is, and Haas and the defensive
Yeah,
players, and just I just wanted to give some shout outs to the D mids. I think our D mid crew is
appreciate it.
fantastic.
I appreciate
So
that.
this has been awesome. I think one of the last things we want to touch on is just championship weekend for you guys. You know, what that's like playing in a championship. I mean, there's not very many rookies that get
Yeah.
that experience ever, you know. I mean, they might get it later, but as far as rookie year to go out and win a championship, that's very rare. And so, can you tell us about that experience? What leading into that matchup, what were some of the matchups you were looking at, and how those played out? Can you kind of tell us what your experience was during that game?
Yeah, so I think from like a broader view, it's like obviously it was like it's biggest game of the year. It's a huge game. There's like a lot more media than normal, like in and around the locker room, talking like different interviews and stuff. So it can be like a little easier than other weekends to get distracted and like caught up in the moment. So like I think one of our messages was from Bates and Tribes is like yeah, it's a huge game, but you can't make it more than it is. Like, don't get yourself too amped up, too jacked up. Like, we're prepared for this all year. Like, we're here for a reason. So, like, go out and like just do your thing. Don't make it like a bigger deal than it is. In terms of like getting too amped up for that game. And in terms of matchups, we watched that Whip Snakes game, the semifinal game they had, and Levi Anderson went off. So we knew we had to slow him down. So we just like put a pull on him, took him out of like his invert, low wing dodge, just like had a pull on him, kind of take him out of the game a little bit. I knew I was gonna be guarding Heacock a lot just because that guy's like a moose, likes to
Yeah,
get downhill.
he's a big dude.
Yeah, he's a big voice and he likes to get downhill. So that matchup for me, I knew like that was gonna be an important one. He had I think 3 in the semifinals. And the biggest thing with him is like you can't let him get going downhill because once he's going, it's like really hard to stop. So that game, if you watch it, like I was out there, like way out there on him, like meeting him at the midfield line every time he got the ball, just making it really difficult for him to like get his momentum going towards the cage. Um, and then obviously like once first couple saves happened, you knew Dauber was hot, like real hot. So it was just about giving him shots that he could see, and he was going to make the save that day. So we definitely fed into that a little bit, giving up more like alley shots, just and not playing a shotless defense. Having a lot of trust in our goalie that he was going to like make saves. So yeah, when it's a lot easier when Dauber gets hot like that. So we just were putting him to places that we knew Dauber liked to see shots from, and he did a great job, obviously.
That's awesome. And like, I just hope people like understand this, that you grew up in Utah. And I think every kid dreams about playing professional lacrosse and winning a championship or hitting a clutch play. But to have Utah on your chest, and when you were a kid, I don't think Utah was even in your mind as far as playing professional lacrosse goes, because
Oh no.
you're probably thinking, oh, I'd like to play for the Cannons someday or whatever. But to have Utah on your chest and win a championship your rookie year, like, what does that look like? Because I think you're the only person to have that experience, right?
Yeah.
You have one of the most unique perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Like, can't like it's another one of those things. It's kind of tough to put into words. The thing that kind of like describes my experience is, we did like our championship celebration. Like, champagne bottles and whatever. And I ran over to my mom and dad and girlfriend. And first thing my dad said was like, "You're bringing it home." And it kind of like that moment, like him saying that kind of like made me take a step back, look down, like you said, see the like Utah on your chest. And it's like bringing a championship home to like my home state that I grew up in. And like, I don't know if I would have 10 years ago would have ever guessed that like we would have not only a professional team, but like a championship winning team. It is something that's like truly surreal. And I'm so grateful that, I'm able to play for Utah and represent Utah as a team, but also individually, like show kids that you can do it. Like you can make it to the highest level. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's all those lacrosse pioneers in Utah
yeah.
that, like when I was playing, I graduated in 2017. Like it wasn't sanctioned then,
Yeah.
so all that work, and we're not that far from that. And we have a
No, not at
championship
all.
in Utah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. And I, I think we've told everybody this, Dauber and Mason, but thank you. Like you brought it home, but you brought it home for us as fans, which, thank you for doing that. We really, we love it as lacrosse fans to have a championship team.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know how it is, right? There's the Jazz. Everybody's got a Jazz jersey on. Well,
Yeah.
I think Brady told the story like championship weekend. He was fishing and up by Heber, and there's a kid with a Archers jersey on getting ice cream, and it's like you're starting to see it more and more. So thank you
Yeah.
guys for all you do. We really
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I think you guys like this podcast is like a true testament of like the fandom that's like truly in Utah. And I think like it speaks volumes to not just like the Archers, but like the lacrosse community as a whole. So I think what you guys are doing is really cool. So thank you. It just keeps promoting the game more and more.
Well, we appreciate that. We do it for fun. So we
Yeah.
appreciate you guys joining us. I did have
Yeah,
one
of course.
question. You talked about matchups with the Whip Snakes. You
Yeah.
watched that semifinal game, and we were actually sitting in a wing restaurant out in like Taylorsville with all the Arrowhead supporters. There was kids from high schools there, and we were all shocked that the Atlas lost. For
Yeah.
you, when you're looking at matchups, you're like, "Oh, this is good for me, or this is bad for me in matchup terms." What were you thinking in that sense?
Uh, like we knew we'd beaten the Whipsnakes obviously earlier in the year and we lost the Atlas. Granted, I don't think we played when we lost the Atlas. I think it was definitely one of our worst performances. Don't get me wrong, they're an unbelievable team. Like when Trevor gets hot, it's tough. Entenmann's like one of the best goalies in the world, so like they're a tough matchup. But realistically, like any team's a tough matchup. Like you saw the Atlas lose to Philadelphia in Utah, like technically the worst team in the league loses to the best team. So in the PLL, it's like any team can win on any given day. So I wouldn't say I was like relieved or happy about the outcome of that game. It was more like, all right, we just got to dial into, who we're playing now. Um, but yeah, so I wouldn't say I was like stoked that they lost or whatever. I have a couple buddies on the Atlas, so I kind of felt bad for them. But it would have been a great game either way in that championship. So
Awesome, love it. All right, Bo, we'll wrap it up here. Final question for you, final comments from you. Like, had 1 year in the league with the Utah Archers. Like, your advice now after running in this pro league to every kid out there in Utah that's listening that has basically, you've paved the way for them at this point. Like, what's your advice for every kid listening right now?
I think the biggest thing is like you got to put in the work. Nothing's gonna get handed to you, but if you put in the work and like you truly are good enough, you will make it. The college coach will find you. Obviously, the PLL coach, like they'll find you. Just like if you look at our draft and even our roster right now, like Dauber went to St. Bonaventure, Haas went to Lindenwood, um, Warren went to Vermont, Mace went to Marquette. So like guys aren't from what you'd call like hotbed or like big time like ACC Big Ten programs, and they're the best of the best. So I think that's just another testament that if you're good enough, the coaches will find you. Whether that's going from Utah to college or from college to the professional level. If you want to make it, it's all about like you and your individual development. So work as hard as you can and most importantly, have fun doing it because that's the reason I'm still doing it. You got to enjoy the game. Don't let it become like a burden or something you have to do. It's something you want to do.
Amen to that.
Yes,
Amen to
sir.
that.
Yes,
Lacrosse
sir.
is fun. Lacrosse is fun.
Exactly.
All right, Brady, take us out.
As everyone knows, I don't know if you guys, when you guys buy an Archer's jersey, there's some words in the color, and those words are above all else win, and that's what you guys did this season. So thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you
All
guys.
right.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Beau.
Thanks, Beau.
This podcast is not affiliated with the Premier Lacrosse League or Archers Lacrosse Club. This is an independent, fan-run podcast.